Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Philly Sports Trips. If you're a diehard fan who's looking for some great Philly sports road trips, it's time to check out the full trip lineup at phillysportstrips.com. I'm Mike Gill. Geoff Mosher is here. Football at 4. Well, we've got some Eagles news to dive into, obviously, today, so we'll start right there. Geoff Mosher, which has been kind of talked about for about a week or so. May 9th is when James Bradberry was released by the New York Giants. And, of course, soon as in Philadelphia, anybody with half a name gets released from a team, Eagles fans want to jump on that player. Well, they didn't wait too long. May 18th, they made the deal. James Bradberry signed today, 1 year, $10 million. What say you on how he fits in?
Oh, the fit is pretty good, Mike. I mean, he's a zone corner, or a corner who has thrived, I should say, in zone. He can play man defense. But this is a team that wants to play a lot of zone. It tried a lot of zone last year, and I think the way they've assembled the team this year in the offseason with who they brought in and how they want to be, I suspect that they're going to want to play a lot of zone coming into this year. And obviously with him being a number 2 corner to pair with Darius Slay, I think you'd have to look at this and say, hey, the guy made the Pro Bowl 3 years ago. He may not be an elite corner, but he's pretty good. And when you put him with Slay, it feels sort of like their best, maybe more than just feels. I think it's their best cornerback combo that they've had in over a decade, probably going back to Lito and Sheldon. Unless I know Asante and Lito, it was pretty good too, but that didn't last very long. But this one feels like it's going to be like that.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned, 2 years ago, 2020, he makes the Pro Bowl. I mean, he's a Pro Bowl player in 2020. His numbers were very similar last year, but he was not thought to have a good year. So why do you think there was a big drop?
Well, I mean, I think some of his pass breakup and interception numbers are bigger last year, more so because everybody was throwing the ball all over the guy. And so he saw a lot of targets. And they were not a bad defense, but they were just a bad team. And they were behind a lot, right? I mean, the teams were probably getting up on them pretty good, I would think, because overall they were a bad defense. I think they were one of the worst defenses in the league in the last year. I personally thought they had good defensive personnel. That's why I said I didn't feel like they were a bad defense. It just everything went wrong for that team last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I definitely talked with some people. In fact, I talked to an AFC team that would have told me it would have had interest in him as a free agent if his price tag were lower. And their scouting report on him was that they felt that he struggled last year with tackling, and they feel like he is not, and he never really has been, but he doesn't have your ideal outside perimeter speed. So those are two kind of sticking points that made that team feel that $7.5 to $10 million was a little bit too much for a guy who's limited in those areas. But the team, I want to emphasize, the same person in that team told me that they felt like he is a very good compliment to have Darius Slay, that he is good for the zone that they want to run, and that he's good at matching up against the taller, physical wide receivers.
All right, well, that was what I was going to say. Can you kind of bring us into how he would fit the zone coverage that, he excels into this defense now, and how that number 2 cornerback might look different from Steve Nelson last year?
Yeah, so Steve Nelson was sort of moonlighting as an outside corner and I bet you'll see this in Houston, especially with them drafting Stingley. If they have the opportunity to move Steve Nelson inside and play the slot, I think that'll be really good for the Texans, especially with their Tampa 2 defense they're going to run, where all the corners are going to get a lot of protection. Because Steve Nelson was a physical receiver, a physical corner, a scrappy corner, but he does not run well at all. And he just doesn't have fluid hips to turn and run, and he's not a very tall guy either. So he's kind of like your ideal nickel cornerback, your inside corner. Now, James, again, doesn't run really well either, but he does have some size and some strength to him, and he has played the outside, and he can play zone well. And it's not like he's a major liability in man defense. So we talked about this last year with Steve Nelson, whether you're playing man or zone. We talked about how John Gannon played his safeties either 1 or 2, whichever look he was in, very, very deep. to protect Steve Nelson. They felt Steve Nelson was a liability on any ball thrown in the air against a receiver on the outside. I don't know that they'll feel that way about James Bradberry as far as it being a major deficiency. Man coverage may not be his forte, but I don't believe it to be his liability, as I'm told, as it was for Steve Nelson.
Right, and I think, in talking, football at 4 with you and Adam and Andrew over the last season is the Eagles had to do a lot with their play calling to kind of mask or compensate for Nelson.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Obviously, when you play, even when they were playing one safety deep later in the year and playing more man, the safety was so deep that there were just times where, you could put, and you saw the good quarterbacks do it, put that ball in certain seams or certain areas of the field where they knew that there would be a lot of space, which they're expecting not that to have this year. In fact, again, I think they're going to go back to being able to play more what you call two shell coverages or two safeties deep or quarters coverage, and play a lot of zone to keep everything in front of them. And when they do that, though, it's not like they're going to have to play their defensive backs out in, Fishtown. They'll be able to, you'll be able to see them on your TV this time. Like, sometimes you'll watch an Eagles game last year, and you'll wonder where the safeties are. So this time you might be actually able to see them on the TV copy. And you can do that not just because of James Bradberry, of course, but because you can play a safety deeper, two safeties deeper, because you're able to stop the run better. And theoretically, the Eagles should be able to do that with the improvements they've made on the defensive line, bringing Jordan Davis in, and then also at linebacker with Nakobe Dean and Kazir White and what they've been doing this offseason.
Yeah, and I think another thing to kind of let the listeners in on is, Bradberry was the number 1 guy with the Giants. Here he kind of slides into the number 2 role for Philadelphia. So that's a change for him as well, where he was the guy on their defense. Here he will be the second guy.
Yeah, and in a sense, people think that that's kind of a sort of a break for James Bradberry, but in actuality, that's really not. I mean, depending on how the games unfold, though, you would think that if you're a quarterback and you have to throw the ball against the Eagles defense, you're looking to throw the ball at James Bradberry and not Darius Slay, obviously. So to me, it means you're probably going to see more targets headed James Bradberry's way. But again, if the Eagles defense is playing well, if they've got, protection, both quarterbacks are protected with safeties, then I'm sure James Bradberry will welcome that opportunity because he's been a decent interception guy when he's been on good defense. Even last year, he had, I think, 3 or 4. So there should be opportunities for this team to create a little more turnover if they're getting that pressure and if they're able to confuse quarterbacks on the back end. That's another area we haven't really discussed, that Jonathan Gannon will want to do more, disguise coverage. Last year in the second half of the season, you would see him kind of spinning safety. He's doing sort of basic disguises, but for guys like Brady and others who've seen it all, that really was not, it's fooling them. But I think he's going to try to do a little bit more exotic stuff on the back end this year with the personnel that he has to try to confuse quarterbacks because, as Avonte Maddox said today, the Eagles aren't going to take a step forward defensively until they start producing more turnovers. They were pretty good at keeping everything in front of them last year, and there were still times where they got, as you know, death by 1,000 cuts, give up 30 points. This year, they've got to be a more turnover-driven defense this year to really be a good one.
And obviously, they're trying to take steps there with adding to the pass rush, getting better corners. I guess this move is made to say we thought we had a more deficient corner than we did safety. Or do you think a safety is still on the agenda?
I think it's possible. I mean, Howie Roseman kind of talked about the slow build, but now all of a sudden with the money that he paid to get James Bradberry, and you're looking and you're saying, wow, really, he's taking care of every single deficiency except for safety. There's a guy like Jesse Bates out there for the Bengals in the franchise tag, and apparently I think I read yesterday that he's unhappy and he may not even report to the Bengals unless, his contract situation has worked out. So, I mean, I guess I assume that's a name you got to keep your eye on now to see what happens there. Or if there's some other safety who winds up becoming available and he's gettable in Howie Roseman's eyes, then you'd have to kind of keep that on your monitor.
Yeah, I know that, the fact is this, like, they have really crossed a lot of items off. So even if they don't go in with the safety and they go with Epps and Anthony Harris, I think they have done a lot to really improve the defense. I think the defense is going to have, Jeff, a totally different vibe and look than the defense we saw last year.
Well, I'll go this far to say this. It should have a totally different vibe and look. In fact, same thing you can say about the offense now that has A.J. Brown, which is really like kind of the missing, just the way that James Bradberry felt like the missing piece to the Eagles' defensive puzzle. I think A.J. Brown was for the passing game and the offense in general. And so to me, this is a pretty good team. I mean, they won 9 games last year. We can argue about the strength of schedule. Their schedule coming up doesn't appear to be that hard as far as facing elite quarterbacks. We talked about that. So, like, they should be a competitive team. They should be a team that wins, at least 9 to 10 games again and maybe more because they're more balanced and maybe some guys will take a step up. So I say it really comes down to coaching and quarterback play. We'll find out a lot about Nick Sirianni, about Jonathan Gannon, and, of course, Jalen Hurts this upcoming season because I kind of agree with the assessment. There shouldn't be any excuses. We shouldn't be looking back saying, oh, they were so deficient here or there that it wasn't fair to player A, B, or C. I mean, this is a pretty balanced roster. And if you look at the NFC, right, there's the Bucs, the Packers, and the Rams. Those 3, I think, are, pretty expected to be pretty good. But after that, I don't know who the 4th best team is. The Cowboys certainly should still be good, but I think that, their roster took a little bit of a hit. So, I'm sure every Eagles fan's thinking, why not us?
Well, right. And I mean, you look around, I don't want to sit here and say they're a Super Bowl team. They added Steve Nelson last year, and, at that point it's like, okay, at least you fielding a competitive player at that position. Is he a Pro Bowler? Is he making you a Super Bowl contender? No, but you had a competitive player at that position. I don't know that this move makes you a Super Bowl contender, but, Moshe, you add them all up. I mean, you've got a pass rusher in Reddick that you didn't have last year. You're getting Brandon Graham back. You've added Davis. You've added 2 linebackers. You got A.J. Brown. He's better than any weapon you had last year. You now have Bradberry, who's an upgrade over Nelson. I mean, just right there, that's about 7 guys that you didn't have last year, and you won 9 games. I mean, you should at least be in that range.
That was my point, is that you should be no worse than last year, but if 2 or 3 guys, like there's always 2 or 3 guys that aren't going to play as good as you think, but then there's usually 2 or 3 guys who are going to play better than you think. And what happens is if it's the right 2 or 3 guys that play better, then you wind up having a much better year than you thought. Like, just think about 2017. Who knew Patrick Robinson was going to play that well for the Eagles? Who knew Carson Wentz was going to go from looking like a pretty good rookie to the league MVP that year, right? So again, if Jalen Hurts doesn't just make incremental improvement, if he makes a huge step forward with this new weaponry around him, then maybe you start thinking a little bit bigger. But you're right. For now, you look at them and you say they should be no worse than last year. They should theoretically be better than last year. And then it just comes down to your quarterback, your head coach, and your defensive coordinator.
Are they? So, you mentioned the quarterback. We had a guy text in and said, hey, all these moves are great, but the quarterback, the Eagles, number one, they're banking on that Hurts takes a step forward. They do so by adding more pieces around him, and not to mention being in this offense for the 2nd year in a row, that you hope you take I don't want to say huge step forward, but look, he had an okay year last year. He wasn't great. He wasn't awful. He could certainly improve, but they're kind of banking on we've given this team way more weapons around him. They like playing for him. If he can take a step in the right direction, that will be helpful for us as well. Instead of him he can't flatline.
Right. Can't regress, I should say. And, look, when you've got a full year of tape on you, plus your division opponents now have seen you twice for a 2nd straight year, there obviously is going to be some challenges here for Jalen Hurts as far as teams getting to see him, getting to watch the tape, figuring out what the teams that did well against the Eagles last year, what they have to do to stop him. But if Jalen himself improves in those areas, then no matter what, that counteracts what teams are doing to stop him. But I almost feel like it's not fair to have this conversation about everything's better, it's just Jalen Hurts, because I feel like that takes Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon a little bit out of the conversation. But I believe that it's almost like 33 here. Like, percentage-wise. Nick Sirianni, we learned a little bit about his ability, obviously, to adjust the way he changed everything from first half to second half. But obviously, we know he wants to pass the ball a lot more. He's got weapons to do that. So I think that there's a responsibility upon him to get the passing game going, be creative with what he does. And same thing with Jonathan Gannon. I mean, there's no excuses for him now with what's been given to him defensively. I don't expect that the Eagles defense is just going to be better because they added personnel. It's his job to come up with the scheme that takes advantage of the talent that he's been given.
Oh,
so those two are as much part of the conversation as Jalen Hurts to me.
I agree. And somebody texted in earlier about Sirianni. Will he make a jump? Will he make adjustments? So I said, no, Sirianni has made adjustments. He showed last year, hey, it's not working. Let's do something different. But will he be a better play caller? Will he be a better leader? How much will he grow as a head coach? I think those are fair to say. I agree with you there. But the point that the text message made was, will he adjust? I think he has shown he will adjust even in the middle of a season.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's not to me can you adjust? It's can you sort of get with this what you want to be? Like when he adjusted last year, it was taking a step back, right? As far as a passing offense and just running the ball, which is sort of the quote-unquote easier offense in the NFL. Now, he added the quarterback run into it until Jalen hurt his ankle. So it's not like he just had a lazy running game. I don't want to insinuate that. But now he's got to rebuild this thing so that he has a very, I would say sophisticated passing game to kind of be able to score 30 points in those big games that they're going to need to be able to do that.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. The Eagles signed James Bradberry today. We would imagine he's the starting corner. So you got Bradberry, Maddox, and Slay. And I guess that's a pretty nice group of players right there. The battle for who would be the backups, I guess, is now going to be another thing to watch. Before it was going to be who's going to start from that group, and that was scary. Well, now it's like who's going to be the guy in case somebody gets hurt there. I guess adding another corner, or they probably are going to stick with the guys they got there, and then a safety. There's probably the last two things on the Howie Roseman checklist this summer.
Yeah, that's it. And then just making sure everybody stays healthy, which is out of his control. But, there are some positions, corner and safety, still that if you have an injury to a starter, your depth not low. So that obviously can impact in a big time.
Would you, Geoff Mosher, rather have spent the money on Tyrann Mathieu or James Bradberry?
Oh, boy. That's a fascinating question. Are you talking about spending the same money or giving Tyrann the money he got versus giving James the money he got? Because they're both making different money.
Yeah, I mean, Tyronn got a 3-year, $27 million deal. You got Bradberry on a 1-year deal. Bradberry's 28, Tyronn's 30.
Yeah, see, I like that. I like the short-term nature of the James Bradberry deal over a 3-year commitment to Tyrann Mathieu. I think Tyrann Mathieu is clearly the better player and would help the defense more. But for what the Eagles are trying to do right now, which is really build behind a new nucleus of younger players, I think the 1-year approach of James Bradberry makes more sense.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. InsideTheBirds.com. Now, today's Wednesday, so I'm imagining your Inside the Birds will drop tomorrow with a lot more on the Bradberry fit, and you got Q&A back, I see.
Yeah. It's doing a month-long series with us. We'll probably break with them, and then but we're just get back for episode. Also, if everybody goes to InsideTheBirds.com, a screen will pop up immediately where they can sign up. All you have to do is enter your name and email address, and then everything we do on all of our platforms is kind of tied into one in our weekly newsletter, and it's one-stop shopping. So I would appreciate anybody who subscribes because it's free.
Good stuff. I hope our listeners will do that. Go to InsideTheBirds.com and subscribe there to their stuff and all the stuff on the Inside the Birds platform. You get Football at 4 every day, just a little taste, and then you'll get a much deeper perspective from Jeff and Adam and Andrew and Quentin Michael and Jason Avant all through the summer as we get ready for training camp. All right, bud. Have a great rest of your week, bud.
All right, Mike. Take care.
All right, there's Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. He was on the phone today. You can tell the difference from when he's on the phone as opposed to the video feed. He was out and about getting stuff done on this James Bradberry front. Everybody's trying to get the information. Everybody's trying to figure out what happened. But apparently, according to reports, he picked the Eagles over 11 teams that were interested in him.